Welcome to the Buy Box Experts podcast. We bring to light the unique opportunities brands face in today's e-commerce world.
Hi, this is James Thomson from the Buy Box Experts podcast. Today's episode is part of a special series of interviews that we have done to dive deeper into the recent phenomenon of private equity companies and FBA aggregators investing in private label brands that are leveraging the Amazon sales channel. As part of this series, we interview a wide range of investors, brokers, consultants, and entrepreneurs that have recently sold their private label brands. We peel back the layers on what's happening in this new investment space and look at how private label brands are finding financial success through the building and eventual sale of their online businesses. For 3 weeks, from mid-February through early March, we will release a new episode every weekday on this topic. Sit back and enjoy today's episode. Hi, I'm James Thomson, one of the hosts of the Buy Box Experts podcast. I'm a partner with Buy Box Experts and the former business head of the Selling on Amazon team at Amazon, as well as the first account manager for the Fulfillment by Amazon program. I'm the co-author of a couple of books on Amazon, including the recent book, Controlling Your Brand in the Age of Amazon. Today's episode is brought to you by Buy Box Experts. Buy Box Experts takes ambitious brands and makes them unbeatable. When you hire Buy Box Experts, you receive the strategy optimization and marketing performance to succeed on Amazon. We also support investors with due diligence services. Go to buyboxexperts.com to learn more. Before I introduce our guest today, I want to send a big shout out to the team at Disruptive Advertising. For off-Amazon advertising, Disruptive Advertising offers the highest level of service in the digital marketing industry. Focusing on driving traffic, converting traffic, and enterprise analytics, Disruptive helps their clients increase their bottom line month after month. Check out disruptiveadvertising.com to learn more. Our guest today is Andrew Savage, founder and CEO of Suma Brands. Suma was founded on the belief that the next generation of household brands will rise out of the Amazon marketplace, like its namesake, the Suma Uma tree rising out of the Amazon forest. Suma's purpose is to find, acquire, and help those brands realize their potential, both in the Amazon jungle and beyond. Prior to Suma Brands, Andrew held advisory roles for retail companies, as well as worked at management roles at Amazon and Target.com. Andrew, welcome and thank you for joining us today on the Buy Box Experts podcast.
Thank you very much for having me.
So Andrew, let me start by asking you, when you think of all this stuff that's happening right now in the FBA private label space, these businesses are hot commodities. What has happened to generate the recent interest in these businesses, given that these kinds of companies have been around for 20 years, as long as the Amazon marketplace?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of factors. Obviously, there's this, huge macro trend of consumers shifting business online. And, I think a big part of that has been Amazon investing in services for their marketplace on the technology side and also FBA. And that's, brought a lot of sellers to market and really significantly scaled the size of their marketplace. And as a result, I think they've focused more on, making sure that their marketplace delivers the level of customer experience and quality that, they really stand for as a brand. And they've, frankly, made it harder, I think, to achieve rankings and reviews in categories, which has made the position that, some of these existing sellers on the marketplace have more valuable. Mm-hmm. And I really see this, it's, part of their flywheel, right? Like, I think their investments in the marketplace have led to, this, rush of entrepreneurs into the marketplace as sellers. And, it's taken a while for those businesses to mature and sort of as a set get to the point where there's enough that are large enough to sort of be interesting in this model. And so I think, it's really those things at a macro level. And then you've had some, early entrants creating visible proof points, of this strategy working. I think that's, that's really the combination. So, that it's existed since Amazon began in the start of the marketplace, but I think it's just now kind of ripened in the sense that there's a critical mass of businesses that have gotten, really pretty big and very solid in terms of financial fundamentals and made this a really interesting opportunity for acquirers.
So what do you think happens over the next couple of years as the number of aggregators and private equity companies getting into the space continue to increase? What's going to happen to the types of sellers that participate, the attitudes of sellers that get onto the platform? Tell me what you think is going to happen here.
Yeah, I mean, it's always hard to say crystal ball and all that, but I would say like I'm super excited about the next 2 years. Like there's a lot of activity in the space. I think it's a good thing. Like another, not surprising, a lot of people ask questions along these lines, and another way to frame it is like, are you worried about competition and competition for deals and supply of deals? And
Mm-hmm.
look, I think competition is a good thing. I
Yep.
think we're in a state where more aggregators, more buyers means higher value for sellers and their businesses, and that's going to bring more sellers to market wanting to sell, and that's going to result in more seller exits.
Yep.
And the visibility of those exits is going to bring more entrepreneurs into the marketplace, which is going to create more brands with potential. And Amazon's famous for their growth flywheel. I really think this is kind of like a flywheel that sits side by side and amplifies that in terms of just really increasing the number of potential saleable businesses out there and the interest in developing these businesses. And I think that's going to be a really good thing. And look, that's, I'm looking at that from like a deals perspective. And, but I think if you think of it too, in terms of customers, like it creates tremendous value for customers, right? So more aggregators operating at scale, it's going to be more efficient supply chains and product costs. It's going to be higher quality.
Yep.
That potentially lower prices. That's going to increase the value available to Amazon's customers on the marketplace, which again feeds their flywheel, brings more customers, more purchases. The marketplace scales, and so it just amplifies that whole effect. And so I really think of like the next 2 years. It's going to be super exciting to see how fast that can spin and how fast it can grow. And I love things that sort of create value throughout the chain. And I think this is one of those flywheels, right? It creates value for sellers. It creates value for businesses like Suma Brands, for Amazon, for thinking about the world that you're in. I would say, for service providers to third-party sellers and to that ecosystem, like it makes the whole pie bigger. So, again, I don't have a crystal ball. I'm not sure what's going to happen, but I see this as really like a positive thing for the entire ecosystem surrounding the marketplace.
So while you had a chance to work at Amazon, you didn't grow up as an FBA private label seller yourself, and yet you're very drawn to the space. You founded a company in the space. Tell me a little bit about the kinds of issues that surprise you the most about the entrepreneurs that participate in this Amazon marketplace.
Yeah, again, I think it's just such a cool space, and just to, I guess, preface what has surprised me with a little bit about like why I kind of got drawn into this space. I think from a personal standpoint, I've always wanted to be an entrepreneur. I think my professional career like has taken me closer and closer, to founding something. But along the way, I've just realized like I'm not the 0 to 1 guy. And I'm really good at taking things that other people have started and making them bigger, better, faster. And that's what Suma Brands is all about.
Yep.
But I'm not, and I've never been the first mover. And frankly, like I'm just in awe of entrepreneurs who can like conceptualize a totally new product or idea and just like will it into being. Like that's such an amazing capability. And as much as I want that to be me, like that's not me. And so, one thing that really attracted me to this space and what we're doing with Suma Brands is like the ability to be involved with entrepreneurship in this way and to reward first movers is like the first step in our value chain. But to be close to and a participant in this ecosystem of entrepreneurs. I think, further, I'm just like personally just really driven by making sure that things are fully utilized. And I don't know, like it's probably because I'm an operator, I always have been, and I focus on scaling things and optimizing things. And so I like don't like to see things that don't achieve their full potential or are underused. And like one of our, just theses in the space is that, the marketplace makes it so easy for individuals to start a brand,
right?
That you get like all these valuable products and brands that have, a kernel of something really huge. But they were maybe started by people that really only care about the product, or they don't have time, to fully scale it. And so I think like at Suma, we're really driven by just making sure that those brands, reach their potential and stepping in and finding win-win situations where, we can be the right steward for the next tranche of growth. And again, really reward somebody that's taken that 0 to 1 step.
So there are a lot of people in Amazon that started businesses, basically Me Too, white labeled products, and they know how to play the Amazon game in terms of building social proof and spending money on advertising. And lo and behold, they have this thing called a brand. Now, it may not be a traditional brand, but it's a brand and it's a cash flow. How do you um, embrace the enthusiasm of people wanting to start brands, but at the same time validate what's really a brand that has potential for growth versus what is a nice white labeled version of something that anybody could buy and sell?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think both flavors of brand are interesting, right?
Okay, let's talk about
And
each then.
yeah, I think that my bias is always toward like product and product people. Like I really feel like um, having a product that solves a customer problem in an elegant way, like and delivers that at a great value, like that's the underpinning of long-term and sustainable value. And so I tend to, my bias is more toward those businesses, but I think like equally impressive is the sort of, I'll call it quote unquote like real estate businesses that people have built on Amazon, where they've played the game effectively.
Yep.
They rank
Yep.
really well. They've got great reviews. And I kind of see, you can take this both ways, right? Like you can take something that has solid product fundamentals, and you can build that presence on Amazon. You can optimize that. You can do various things to build brand equity kind of off marketplace. And that's a very interesting business. And then you can also take real estate and you can come at it from the standpoint of optimizing the product and making the product better, and apply that lens to it. And so I wouldn't say like we don't focus exclusively on one or the other. It is very interesting to hear kind of the different paths that people take to their business. And I would generally sort of segment it into entrepreneurs that are really focused on building a business on Amazon and very data driven, and they find their niche and like
Right.
they play the game, et cetera. And
Yep.
then I think there's this other set of more kind of product people that because Amazon makes it so easy to start that business, they've really focused on a product. And then because of the tools and services that Amazon have been able to build a business around that. So yeah, it's fascinating the different flavors that are out there, and I think both are valuable in their own way. And one of the really cool things about doing what we're doing is just having been able to talk to hundreds of people that have done it this way or that way or slightly different, and find the different foundations of value there.
We talked about all these new investment organizations coming in and being interested in Amazon private label brands. A little bit of a rhetorical question, but are there enough private label brands available for sale today that all these aggregators will have an equal opportunity to build portfolios? How do you think about the business of finding businesses to vet and eventually buy some of?
Yeah. It's a good question. One that comes up a lot too with, all the activity in the space again. And I think I always just sort of reset on like just how huge the space is, and how fast it's growing. And again, going back to that flywheel idea, like the more visibility to these types of exit opportunities, the more, the law of large numbers is going to work in the marketplace and surface, saleable brands. So I'm not particularly worried at this point about the supply of brands. I think in terms of like how we find them, obviously there's a big broker ecosystem out there. I think everybody's plugged into that. We certainly are, and look at those deals. But our focus is really on being available for brands, and entrepreneurs who are exploring this process. We're happy to educate. We don't assume that any deal is going to be not competitive, even if they're not brokered. And so we're very focused on making, market, or in some cases above market offers. And we want to be a value add part of the ecosystem. So, big focus for us. And one of the reasons I'm here talking to you is just making sure that the Suma Brands name is out there, and that the seller community knows what we stand for and what we do and who we are, and feels really comfortable reaching out to us when they're starting to even just like explore that idea, knowing that like first and foremost, we want to be here as a resource, and build those relationships. And so that's a big focus for us. And then of course, we source leads and find other ways to connect through sellers through a variety of channels. I don't want to get too far into the detail, but probably not surprisingly, we do some cold outreach through various channels. We really try to make sure that we have good relationships with with firms like yours who are in the business of working with third-party sellers. You're going to see us doing a lot more content and trying to provide information and tools that are useful to sellers. But yeah, I think I'm generally not concerned about the availability of saleable businesses and of deals. I'm more concerned with how do we be front and center? How are we top on the list when a seller starts to think about that process?
So when you look at companies that come to you, you're going to see the good, bad, the ugly. You're going to see everything that comes through the door. Given what you've seen so far, what would you like to see private label sellers doing a better job of before they decide to go to market?
Yeah, it's a great question, and you're going to notice a consistent thread through my answers, kind of on the product theme. So fair warning, but I think a lot of the other guests you have in the series are probably going to talk about the financial and like operational and Amazon hygiene, reviews and rankings, et cetera. That stuff is obviously really important. We care about that, but I won't belabor that point because I think everybody's kind of talking about that. And the way that you frame the question, like what would I like to see brands do more of? I would like to see a little bit more of a focus on product in general. I think again, while both flavors of Amazon Marketplace business and of sort of styles of entrepreneurship are interesting and valuable. From Suma Brands perspective, we want to build brands, right? We're going to be a top tier Amazon operator, and the marketplace will always be a big part of what we do. Mm-hmm. But it's really important to us to find brands that have potential. And I think that long-term value being rooted in products. It's important to spend some time thinking about your business as the products you sell and not only your Amazon presence. And I think in terms of, I see some businesses where it's really like the whole focus is just like the presence on Amazon, and that's great and important, but we're trying to think bigger than that. And so I think I'd like to see more entrepreneurs like really having a coherent point of view on like, where does their product stand in the competitive set that's on that Amazon page with them? Like, what are they competing on? Who are their customers and what's important to them? What does their product roadmap, look like? And thinking about, the underlying foundation of the business, which, if you're a marketplace seller is selling a physical product. And so having some thoughtfulness around that. And then, of course, all of the hygiene topics that you're going to hear a lot about from other guests.
When we talk about the product roadmap, having done due diligence on a number of brands that are at this point looking to sell, what I'm often surprised by is, it looks like there's a whole bunch of things that they say, oh, you should go international, you should add 20 more products, you should spend more money here, here, and here. The company is undercapitalized to be able to do these things itself. That they're putting down a bunch of things that look good on paper, but how do you delineate between what looks good on paper and actually demonstrating that you've started down the path of some of these potential growth channels?
Yeah, and I think like, and maybe this is something that I feel like sellers could do better. I hate to use the word better, maybe could do differently when they're preparing for sale, is like really be focused. It's like, I totally agree with what you just said. It's like you read, especially in the brokered world, you read the prospectuses and it's all the same stuff. It's just a list of like, here's things you could do. And it's like, yeah, we all know we could do this stuff. Yeah. What's much more valuable and important is, having an insight specific to your brand of like, which of these levers would really work and why. And then to your point, ideally you have some early traction or data point, a minimum viable product experiment that shows some evidence of that traction, right? And so from a buyer's perspective, to me, having one growth lever that, is really thoughtful in the context of the brand and has a data point supporting it, I'll take that all day long over a list of, all the possible growth levers that someone might pull. You know what I mean? Sure. It's like a job description basically, if you just list, everything that you might do. So yeah, I think that's, really good call out. And I think that's, another thing that maybe sellers could do differently is like, don't be afraid to be really focused. There's strength comes from focus,
Yeah.
and great results come from focus. And
So,
do that in the context of your brand.
so you've got this idea of better focus. You're looking at companies and you're saying not only is it set up well, but is it set up forward looking to be able to scale? Could I take this and do my magic and make it grow that much better? So how do you evaluate a company today and say, I see all sorts of future growth that Suma Brands could activate versus
Yeah.
I see a company that's got decent cash flow, but I don't know how we're going to scale this thing two to 10x.
Yeah. Good question. I think I might not dive too far into the specifics because I think, this is, I hate to use a cliche, but sort of one of I think the elements of secret sauce for the different aggregators is how you grow things. But look, I would say, we look at a couple things when we're evaluating a brand. We look at product fundamentals, we look at Amazon fundamentals, and we look at financial fundamentals. And I think, we start to get interested when, two of the three are there. And then we start to think about, which of the ones that are there can we amplify, and are we equipped to address and improve the one that maybe isn't there?
Right.
And for us, it's really about, again, looking at it in the context of what does this brand need to be great and to continue to grow, and then being self-reflective about like what are we really good at and what can we contribute. And so looking at our capabilities and comfort in supply chain, in marketing, in kind of the brand management, product roadmap side of things, and then also like we look a lot at possible deal structures, and we can maybe touch on that a little bit later, but I think we really try to look for deal structures that deploy the best resources against a brand. And to be honest, like sometimes there's something an entrepreneur is doing that we feel like we're not going to do this as well as you are out of the gate. Like it's going to take us time to ramp on this.
Yep.
And trying to find like the right deal structure that honors the brand. Like we feel like that's first and foremost. We want to like build on what the entrepreneur has created. And so if there's an area where we feel like, hey, you're doing something better than us and we need to learn a little bit from you, like we're not afraid to say that. I think it's, that it's important to know what you can hit it out of the park on, and where you might need help. And for some of these brands that does exist, like the entrepreneur is bringing something very unique to the table, and we need to learn from that over a period of time. And so, I think we look at all of those things, and before we make an offer on any brand, we have a very specific growth plan. It's usually relatively focused, as alluded to in my prior answer. And our goal is like, we don't want to acquire anything that we're not going to be able to scale significantly, because we want to deliver all the value we can to the sellers that we're buying from. And we really want to pay, homage to and continue to build the brand that they've started.
So let's talk about Suma Brands' approach to deal structure. When I look at the conversations I've had with other types of investors, it's all over the map. You've got some organizations that are happy to buy a company and say goodbye to the owners 30 days after acquisition. There are other models where, the owners may stick around for a second bite of the apple a year from now, 2 years from now. How do you think about this equation of capitalizing on all that very specific knowledge the owners have, but also being in a position that you can actually start to apply your expertise to make this thing grow faster than what the current owners might be able to do?
Yeah, I think it's I definitely agree. Like it's all over the map. I think our approach, my approach to negotiating a deal and just negotiation in general, is like you look for ways to make the pie bigger, right? Like haggling is not negotiation. So if you and I are only arguing over like what's the cash value of this business, that's haggling, right? And obviously that is a huge and important component of the deal. But we really make a concerted effort to understand what's important to sellers, both financially and from on non-financial elements, and look for ways that we can structure a deal that creates a win-win and actually makes the value, the size of the pie bigger. And so for that reason, we don't really have, I would say we have like kind of standard flavors of deals, but we're willing to be somewhat bespoke, especially at this stage. We're ramping up, and we're just we're looking to get the right brands in and have the right resources deployed against those brands, and are open to exploring again what's important to a seller and what they can do and what is important to us and what we can do, and looking for that intersection. And so that's generally our approach, and it comes down to what does the seller need and what do they want? What does Suma Brands need and what do we want? What does the brand need? And do we have an overlap that we feel like increases the total value in that transaction? So not to be non-committal, but I think in terms of maybe one of the ways that we're different from other players in the space is like we're willing to look at these things creatively and really try to find the right fit for the entrepreneur and the brand, so that brand can join the Suma family and we can help it achieve its potential.
As an agency that works with brands, it's often not sure what the right word is. It's often extremely rewarding to be able to go to a client and say, actually, there's 5 things that are broken here that we can fix, and it's only going to take a few months to fix a bunch of them. And you're going to be in a position where you might be twice the size by this time next year. You might be 3 times the size by next year. And in some ways, it's rewarding to say, I know my role as an agency, what I can do to fix things. But likewise, as an investor, you see a growth opportunity. But how do you balance that with the brand owner saying, oh my goodness, I left so much money on the table because I didn't know how to fix these easy things that would have seriously driven up revenue?
Yeah. And look, I think that's part of the deal process, right? Is figuring out like, what's the right risk reward balance for a seller, right? Not everybody has the same balance, and some people are like really fixated on cash up front and they want bird in a hand, and other people maybe recognize that like, hey, I know this brand has runway. I know I'm not the right person to do this on my own, and I'm almost looking for more of a partner. To be clear, we're not investors. We're operators, and we buy brands outright.
Yep.
But I often think of one flavor of a deal is like a partnership where look, like we want sellers to get fair value, and we know that if we're picking the right brands, if we're applying what we do really well, and if we're realizing where there's a unique value that the seller can bring to the table for some period of time, we know that the brand is going to be much more valuable with that set of circumstances than if we try to take a one-size-fits-all approach and sort of get as much value as possible off the table on the buy side, to the detriment of the brand. So yeah, obviously it's a balance. We're focused on delivering great returns, for our investors, but we also, are again fans of sellers, supporters of sellers, believers in entrepreneurs, and I think part of this whole ecosystem and part of what is going to keep it interesting and keep the supply there is that sellers have good outcomes, and we want to be part of that as well. On a less tangible side, like I always feel kind of silly saying this, but like one thing we really believe at Suma is like we want to be part of like I call them happy stories, but we're going to take these businesses and we're going to massively scale them, and we want to feel really good about like what we're putting out into the world. And I think one really cool thing about this business model in this chain is like if you do the deal right, it starts with making somebody really happy, right? Someone that's poured years into building the starting point and blood, sweat, and tears, and are invested, in the brand they've created. Like you start by making them happy with a good exit. You continue on making, customers happy by improving the product quality and experience, et cetera. You're making Amazon happy along the way. You're making service providers in the ecosystem happy. And then at the end of the day, we're making our investors happy because we've done all those things and we've built a ton of value. And that's just, kind of a corny way to think about it maybe, but it's something that's really important to us. And we want to help increase sort of the level of utility and happiness in the world.
So Andrew, what do you do to make Suma Brands successful in the long run? How do you think about this process of putting different pieces together into a portfolio? What can you share with our listeners in terms of what makes you successful long term?
Yeah, I think it starts with picking the right brand partners and making good acquisition decisions and getting the right people on board. But at the end of the day, it shakes out to we're world-class Amazon operators. Amazon's always going to be a core part of the business. And so improving that side of it and being top tier there is a key element of delivering, success for the business and return for our investors. And then I think the second layer of that is, as we talked about, many of these brands will have potential beyond the marketplace. Not all of them maybe, and we don't expect to do that, with every single brand that we acquire, but
Right.
Finding opportunities where, we can build a household name. We can push into other channels. We can create equity directly with customers, or we can even enhance the brand, within the context of the marketplace. So, I think those are the two things that we need to do really well and that we will do really well. And, again, maybe a more qualitative way to think about it, people ask me a lot, like, what's your definition of success in 3 to 5 years? And there's some financial answers to that and operational answers and, et cetera. But the thing that really resonates with me is, like, in 3 to 5 years, I want to, as I'm walking around in my daily life, maybe once a week, once every other week or whatever, I want to hear somebody like raving about a product that they found. Like we all do, right? You find like a great product,
Sure.
It makes your life better in like some major or trivial way.
Yeah.
And you just talk about it, you talk about it all the time. You tell everybody who will listen about it. And, I want to regularly hear people like raving about a product and be able to say like, hey, did you know that's one of our brands? And I know like if we accomplish that, all the financials and everything will fall out of that. But it's basically, scaling these products and brands to a place where there's something that people love, are aware of, seek out, tell other people about. And that's really, I think, sort of the qualitative foundation of success. And then, there's all these more sort of tactical building blocks of that.
I want to ask you a question in closing our discussion today around the types of software and companies and consultants that you've looked at that have helped you get to the point that you're able to be a professional investor in Amazon companies. Are there people along the way that have been particularly beneficial that you want to call out?
So I guess I just want to clarify one thing. It's nuanced, but I don't think of Suma as an investor or investment group. I think of us, we're an operating group. As I just want to be clear, like,
fair point. As you invest, so you can operate these companies. Understood.
Yeah, yes. Yeah. But it's important. Like, I think success really in this space depends on being great operators, and that's what we're focused on. And I guess on the question, I sort of hate to pick favorites, but I'm not above complimenting the host. So I would just say, you are somebody that has been very helpful to us, and proactively so. And I have, really appreciated connections that you've made for me and advice that you've given me. So I'll maybe just take the opportunity to thank you for that. And thank you again for having me on the podcast. It's been great to be here.
Andrew, I want to thank you for joining us today on the Buy Box Experts podcast. For those of you interested in learning more about Suma Brands, please visit sumabrands.com.
Thanks for listening to the Buy Box Experts podcast. Be sure to click subscribe, check us out on the web, and we'll see you next time.